everyone. Welcome to our episode number two. Thank you again for coming and joining with us in this podcast, Sugar, Spice, and Everything Chaos. And I'm your host, Anne, and I have my beautiful co host, Pauline. And I think we are going to continue talking about this female loneliness epidemic. And I think it's a good place for us to ask Pauline to tell us what she has in mind to talk about for today.
I have so many things in mind to talk about today. But to begin with, we're going to talk about this idea or this sort of construct called misogyny. What do we know about misogyny? So, misogyny is basically this deep seated hate that you see people having for anything that's related to femininity or womanhood, right? So you will see this sort of attitude coming up when people think about the color pink, think about things, anything that's related to, the human female experience. You
Hmm.
will see it as a problem. If you kind of look at the way that we perceive femininity in the wild, right? You have the lioness, you have other females in, different species. We don't have the same attitude towards them. But when it comes to the human females, we have this deep seated hate. Um, what's your experience with misogyny? And let's talk about our experiences with misogyny first, and then we'll get into the female loneliness epidemic and how these two things are related.
I think my idea of misogyny is I myself has been very harsh towards my femininity. Like I was not, there was a phase that I call it like the I don't like pink face, right? So I kind of became this wanting to be more masculine, wanting to be liking things that is more what men would like. So I had that phase, but I think it was something like there was this video I saw about Indira Gandhi and with and another actress. So when being told that they told Indira Gandhi that you are not like a woman, you are like a man. And then she's like, that's not a compliment. And I am not happy with wanting to be associated with that statement. And then there's another actress, and then that was told to her, and she says, that I took it, that was the most proud moment in my life. And she said that she is the happiest because her parents called her that she is better than a son. Like, that she is like a son, she's not like a daughter. So I think it's one of the themes that as women ourselves, forget about misogyny from men, that is another level of oppression. But then towards ourselves, we hate ourselves as women. We hate the fact that we are who we are, the way we present to the world. It's very difficult for us to be ourselves. So I think that is my idea of misogyny so far. Like, what do you have to say?
Yeah, so I think this is like a universal experience because I remember this was the idea I had when I realized that menstruation is something that we're gonna suffer through for 30 years. Like the first time I got my period, and everyone said this is what your life's gonna be for the next few decades, right? I did not like hearing it. I was like, no, I wanna be like my dad or the bunch of men that I see around because looks like their life is fun, right? And before I got my period, do you remember like the Whisper and Stay Free ads that we see on television where like these women would be jumping and having fun, and I had no idea about what menstruation was, but watching these advertisements I would be like, oh, I want that, I want to be that woman, right? So from like a girlhood where I wanted to be like an adult woman to an adulthood where I did not like the womanhood that is socially constructed. I
Mm.
think right now I'm at this point where I'm learning a lot of things and unlearning a lot of things and relearning a lot of things from my girlhood. Like I really like I think most of the things that I learn are basically like my younger version's wisdom
Mm.
where I have to reiterate myself because like I think we were just human when we were, in our pre-puberty period, and then suddenly so many social conditioning happened, and then we had to internalize this sort of hate that we have towards uh, women, right? And this is something that's kind of rooted in the loneliness that we experience, because what it means to be a woman is to be needy, to be someone who's clingy, to be someone who's very weak and sort of pathetic. That's the idea that we know of, we think of when we think of women, right? So to kind of shift into this conversation about the politics of the female psyche, why do you think women have to be either, like this sort of person who is extremely good or extremely bad? So I think I don't know if this is a common experience, but again, I'm going to talk about like the menstruation thing that happened. So when I would think I was in sixth standard, a bunch of my classmates were getting their first period, right? So we would all like gather around and talk about what's happening and what's not happening, and in these hush hush conversations, right? I remember one particular classmate of mine. She, when she came back from her holidays, like that, the leave that she took, right? She started to cry about how, she got it very early and now she cannot do anything. She kind of hates it. And there was a lot of like, you know, sadness and disappointment and frustration around it. And the reason for that is because in her family, once you get your puberty, once you get your first period, the idea is the family would quickly start to look for a potential spouse,
Mm.
right? So that's the kind of family where they put posters around to let people know that, okay, this girl is now mature enough to get married and they're ready to like let her go. So she was actually processing this whole thing of leaving her family for her in-laws and her husband's family, because that's what a period, getting your first menstrual blood means to a lot of Indian women. So, why do you think, or rather, how do you think you can kind of connect these two and disconnect these two to kind of become a little bit more human in the way that you live life, right? Do you understand my question? Because as much as these are things that we don't think about, this is the social conditioning. Unconsciously, subconsciously, we're processing ourselves this way. How do we kind of extract these two things apart?
I'm just trying to process a lot of things that happened over what, since 15, 16 years old, and now like another 15 years has passed. And the things that we experience as women, say in my experience, is not something we think that it is all automatically being processed. Like we go come to a certain stage, and automatically these social expectations makes us, believe that these are the norms, these are the things, these are the ways that I have to go ahead with my life. Right? For example, I think I got my periods in a very small town. So I was doing my ninth to 12th in a small town. And I think I was the last one in the class. And everyone in the class, because it's a small town, they used to take like 10 days off. And they had all of these rituals and procedures that they were doing. And they used to come and tell us, like, you're supposed to take raw eggs and oils, and has to be kept alone and inside like a kudise, this like a tent. And then there's like they've been, there's like a function that's happening, and then everybody comes and says. So I felt like when I heard those stories, I felt scared. I thought, okay, like I didn't want my personal information to be, telecasted to the whole world, saying that, that she has got her periods. That's not something that I was comfortable with. And also the fact that I didn't wanted to go through that sort of a, it's social isolation, or these I don't know, I felt it was unhygienic to eat raw eggs and stuff like that. And I felt like, okay, this is a part that I don't want to reach. And when people were, isolating me from conversation because I didn't yet get my periods, I was actually happy. But then when it happened in my family, of course, it was a lot different. Like I didn't have any of those criteria that they followed. I was just as normal as I went on with my life. So I think I am just trying to understand how they would have felt and how I felt my experience. And then when I had that realization, oh, it's not a actual thing that every woman goes through. You have a certain, privilege or something that you can choose not to do those things. Like in my house, they did give me a good food. But they gave me like proper eggs and nuts and all of those, which is cooked, right? And I didn't had to follow the procedures, and I was so happy that it didn't happen to me. And I had my some of my classes, like my in my church and stuff like that. I had to go for my classes. I was in the middle of it and I got my periods. I just went the next day. I didn't have to take a break. So I felt very free. And I felt like these social standards that you talk about, I feel like it is all an illusion. It feels like an illusion. It's just been pushed on to us for no reason. Like I have no health issues. I turned out to be better without drinking those raw eggs and those oils. And I don't know, that the only way for us to take forward is to at least create a generation where we say it's not okay to restrict a woman based on just because of her gender, and say tie it to her societal norms that has been practiced so far, and say this is the definition of a woman and you fit into this definition. And I think that is the line we have to draw, and say I won't fit the definition. I won't do this. I will do what I think it is right scientifically, what is right for me as a woman, for me, for my body, what is right, instead of making me, pushing me into this. I don't know. That's what I feel. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of exactly, right? So you see that we never really hated being a woman. We hated what society did to us because we identify as women. So that's where I'm coming to, right? So biologically speaking, being a woman is something that's amazing. We get to create life. Even if we didn't create life, our body like lets us process so many things differently. Our creativity, our problem solving, our ability to be emotionally intelligent. Oh my
We are
God.
smart.
So,
We are smart. We are very smart as
yeah,
women. And I think that is a lot of people don't realize it, like our ability to understand emotions and the kind of intuitions we have. So we women can actually have these emotions and see multi-layer of the problems, like we can see it many layers, we can manage so many things. It's not saying that we have it all, but I'm saying that we have that capacity to do it. So imagine how much potential we have.
exactly. So when we talk about potential, the problem is we know that we have it, but unless we have the space to express our potential, right? We don't really know what we have. Like we know something is there, but how do we express it? And for most of us, I think the potential, the realization of it is something that we think we can only have in our family life. Get married, have children, that's where your potential is. So if you look at like theories from psychology, right? I think this is one of Freudian perspectives where he talks about how you need to move from like your phallic pleasure principle to the genital, reality where you basically, if you're a woman, you have to give birth to a son so that you feel more fulfilled in life. Like he talks about this thing of penis envy, right? And this is again problematic because like what it says is a woman is never fulfilled by herself individually. She needs something to kind of make her feel masculine or like a man so that she feels a little bit more comfortable. And I think uh, for the longest time in the modern history, right, we've all been chasing that. If you look at the recent trends with like the girl boss culture, right? We're all kind of thinking like men, where we know how to think about investing, we know how to think about educating ourselves, we know how to think about uh, basically building businesses and I don't know, just we don't really tap into so much about community connection, the female intuition part of it. A lot of female influencers even talk about, being exhausted after a point in their career that they need to have like a mental health break and then they go off for a while. So this just tells us that uh, you have something to say. I can see you thinking.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's just when you say this boss babe culture and so there's only two things in the world. Let's just set it there, okay? There's a
Hmm.
standard of definition for a woman that if you fit into that framework, then the womanhood or the femininity where you want to feel all of those or use all of your feminine qualities makes sense currently within that female definition, societal standards. And there is a male definition, which is the male dominated male system that is there, where you are thinking about making money, getting ahead in your career and financially independent and being strong and brave and basically all of that male qualities, right? So there's no in between between these two, so you either fit here or you fit here. But these modern
Yeah,
women have realized that this particular standard that has been set for women has been so messed up and toxic that the only other way to get out of this toxicity is to fit into a male system, right?
yeah,
So there's no system for us to say that, okay, I am going to be that feminine girl and take care of my community, be in touch with my nature and intuition, and have that lovey-dovey, all of those emotions, play have a place to explore and use my emotion. But no, like nowadays women don't cry, women don't express, women have become like literally like shut down completely. And you can see that even in workplace, that women are more emotionally numbed and suppressed than men. So I think
yeah.
this is what is happening. I think we don't have a system for us to
Exactly.
express.
Exactly. So, if you follow social media trends, because I do, I think the first system that you're speaking about is the trad wife system, where they talk about femininity and they say you have to be a stay-at-home wife because that's where your heart is. And they usually get into a religious sort of a dialogue as well, where they say God made Eve to be a man's helper, and they kind of push that propaganda. And the
Hmm.
other thing is the hyper independent woman who is basically productive 24/7. She buries herself into her workaholic life just so she can numb herself from all the feelings that kind of come up. So you will never see her, upset or processing something emotionally. She's always like doing stuff. So she's very inspiring to a certain degree, but also it's very unrealistic. Like I'm very curious when I see these people to especially something to do with like their health related concerns, because I think there are influencers that kind of come up with their own brand, right? And only later on they kind of tell you something related to their health issues, and when they tell you about their health issues, then it suddenly makes sense, because it's not normal to be productive to that extent, right? Being a woman, you're not supposed to push yourself like a man can, because your hormones are very different. So coming back to this dialogue of like having two options and both those options are shit options, right? So what is the way out of it? And what does psychology, tell us? Like the body of literature in psychology tell us about why this is happening to women, why this mentality exists in the first place. So this is like a popular concept. Again, it's a very Freudian concept. Have you heard of the Madonna whore complex? It's a pretty
No,
popular.
no.
Okay, so splitting,
Yeah,
the
like
defense
the
mechanism.
little diagnostic splitting.
Yeah.
Like the
So
multiple
split.
personality splitting.
Oh, no, no, not the multiple personality one. Like the borderline personality one.
Okay, okay. Haha, okay.
Huh. So basically, splitting is something that happens when the same person is both some sort of a hero for you, and the same person is some sort of a villain to you. So you're not able to see that person as having both these qualities. You're not supposed to see that person as good and bad, but you see them as good or bad instead, right?
Hmm.
So sometimes you kind of villainize them to the point where you hate them. Sometimes you kind of give them a hero sort of a label, that you glorify them, you see them as like godlike, right?
Hmm.
So you see that with women, a lot of women that we have hanging around us, it's very hard for us to humanize these women around us. We either see them as like a whore, which is like, a woman who's just greedy and bad and selfish, right?
Mm.
And on the other end, you see her as this goddess, like this. She's a virginal person. She is so pure. She is so innocent, right?
Innocent.
But
Oh,
if you
yeah.
look,
Innocent
yeah,
is the
yeah, like
word, key word.
yes, she's so naive, she's so ignorant, but like we will not use those words. A woman, an innocent person. That's what we would frame it as. But if you look at it for men, right, you don't have innocent versus sex addicts. Like you don't split men like that. So when we talk about male sexuality and male sexual needs or emotional needs, right? We think it's normal for them to have sexual needs. We think it's normal for them to have ambition. We think it's human for them to have these things. Likewise, when you see a father taking care of his own child, we see that as like a very nurturing figure. We don't immediately say, "Oh, he's this, he's that." Like it's just that that person is humanized. So you don't place that sort of heavy expectation on a man either to be like a sinner or a saint. A man is just a man, right? So it's easier to be a man, it's freedom to be a man. But when you see what it means to be a woman, it's very complicated. Like you said, you can either be a saint who doesn't think about men, who's a nun who's just focused on her work, or you see her as this family motherly figure who is into whatever. So like why can't we see women as people who have different needs at different points in time, who are complex, who are annoyed sometimes, who are happy sometimes, who have their mood swings? Why is a woman having a mood swing seen as a personality problem rather than a situation problem? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
see a man getting upset, you say, oh, he's having a bad day. Leave him alone for a little while. But if you see a woman having problems, you say, oh, she's a bitch. Like very easy to throw that at her face. We don't think, okay, she's probably having a bad day. We don't sit and stay curious. Rather, we just throw it at her face, and we immediately get into this thing of like, yeah, she is moody that way.
Mm.
We attribute it to her personality. So how do we navigate this internalized misogyny that all of us have somehow done to ourselves? Yes, society started it, but now as adults, right, we have this chance to unlearn it and become better people. So, how do you actually go through that? Because one of the reasons we are so lonely is because we are so hateful towards ourselves. We are
I
so
think one of the
unkind.
reasons we are lonely is because it's, see, you I told about the two systems, right? You think that women who are choosing to either of the system, do you think that they are okay with staying in that system? Of course, there's natural womanhood, the natural femininity, the natural needs will always come out, right? As a, it's not the only way to survive is by suppressing who we are as women. And what happens is that dissonance. Like, I have chosen this life and I am this person, and I am not both, right? So there's this dissonance, that uncertainty and that feeling of, not being enough or not being who we are, because as society we are condemned as per, so, and in whatever we do we are not happy. So it makes us question, like, even those women who are traveling these days and who are doing all those content where they are independent, they are happy, they quit their job and they are just living on their own. And people look at those people as, like, somebody who's like, like a, the cream layer or the extremities. Like, they are not seen as something that is normal part of society. They are seen as women who are not normal, right? Like, I wait. it is very lonely because see, I'm just talking about myself. It feels very lonely because you are going out into the world doing your work, being like alone and being that, sort of like the, breadwinner of the family, taking on the man's role, and you're taking care of your own needs, traveling everywhere regardless of how our society is unsafe for women, and you have to be responsible for who you are. There's no, the accountability is to yourself. It feels lonely because there is no opportunity or space for me to be me. If I cry in front of my colleagues, it is going to be, they are going to look at me as somebody who is like weak or who can't be trusted, and I don't want that. If I'm going to cry to my friends, of course they are gonna, accept me. If I cry to a different set of people, if my parents or my family, they are going to say, okay, that's because you're a girl, you can't handle this. And like, what do you expect a woman to say? Everywhere she goes, they are telling all sorts of labels, and how do you think that she can survive in this whole world? It is lonely. Even a woman doesn't understand another woman.
I agree with all of this. And I think that's the reason we're talking about this in this conversation today. Uh, I think before we try to understand other women, it's important to understand our reality first. So even when you are vulnerable with others, right? Let's say the example you gave, actually, it's reminding me of something that happened at work in the previous semester for me. So, I recently lost my dog, right? So that was a very, I don't know, it was a very sad thing that I had to process, and it was a lot for me. And the next day, I went to work because you go to work, right? Like you can't just sit and cry for 10 days about it. But I kind of needed that distraction as well. And I was not okay. I was very sad. I was crying. And the minute I told my colleagues about it, right, I kind of did start to tear up, and I started to also go on this rant about how I miss him, how this happened, that happened. And as much as it was very vulnerable, and yeah, I could have been perceived as weak, I could have been ostracized, I could have been condemned. None of those things happened. My colleagues, some of them cried with me that day. And I was very needy at that point in time. So one of the things that I was processing on that day was how I will not be able to get Jelly's hugs anymore. So Jelly is the name of my dog, and I was gonna miss that hug. Like the minute I would enter my house or leave, I'm just very touchy with him. So I knew I would miss the hug. So I was, telling one of my colleagues, I think that's the most hard thing about like him not being there anymore, because who will hug me when I go home now? And immediately, my colleague said, you can hug me. And then, we kind of hugged, and it was a whole moment. I think about it from time to time, and I'm very grateful. And now I kind of have this culture at work where, until then, I'm this person with strict boundaries where I'm like, let's take it slow. Let's not get too friendly with colleagues because, like you said, it's just work, right? But after that point, I kind of realized how important it is for us to be vulnerable with each other. And work is somewhere where you see these people consistently, right? Every single day, I see those faces. So I started looking at them as emotional investments as much as they were financial investments for me, right? So, right now, I have this space at work where if I'm not doing okay, if I'm feeling lonely, I can be like, I need a hug. And then I could also kind of tell them that I need a longer hug today. And then I get that,
Mm.
right? I know I am perceived as weak for having these needs, but also I don't care.
Mm.
Like, I think that's the point. And what I realize is whenever I kind of have these conversations, not just at work, wherever, I've been, right? I'm honestly very surprised to see how much people want to accommodate you, right? Like, people want to show up for you, people want to be there, right? It's just that maybe, not everyone will understand what you need at that point in time. So you need to know what you need so you can tell them, right? So this is again, something that I think women should work on. uh, Before you kind of sit and think about how people are not understanding you, do you understand yourself enough to know what to ask from people? Like, do you want money? Do you want attention? Do you want advice? Do you just want to cry? Do you just want presence? What exactly do you want? Do you know? If you say you don't know, then figure it out first. If you can figure that out, then I think forming a community, creating a space where other women and other men can support you would become easy. Because I think that's where the problem is, right? Like, even in romantic relationships, right? Whenever you talk to like a boyfriend or a husband, a lot of them will say nobody can read a woman's mind. That's so true, because women don't know how to read their own minds,
Hmm.
right? It's like, I don't know what I want, but you figure it out. Why are you outsourcing your responsibility? Like, no, none of us are mind readers, none of us are like magicians or psychics, right? Maybe we are, I don't know, maybe we are, maybe we are not. But like, for the most part, we need communication. For that reason, humans developed complicated language just so we can communicate what's happening within us. So my question would be, uh, why are you not developing the right understanding of yourself so that you can communicate better with the people around you, so they can support you enough to handle your loneliness? And again, female loneliness is so different from male loneliness. We're not looking for someone to come and save us. That's not what we want, right? So I think for men, they want someone to come and update, take over their life, and, basically become a second mother, right? But I don't think girls want that. Girls still like the freedom that they have and stuff. But again, this is sort of a hard conversation. But girls who are listening, what do you want in life?
I think recently I had a friend of, she's now a friend, used to be a student before, and she was like feeling low. And I just asked, like, what happened? What's happening? And then she told me that, some of her close friends she's having a difficult time with them, that, they are not as close as before. And they've had some, misunderstanding and things like that, and they've drifted apart. And I think her only world was that those friends, few friends, and then female friends. And then now that it's gone, that she feels like she's completely lonely, like in the sense that she has nothing or nobody, nothing to look forward to. But I think many of us as women, we tend to look for our, sort of like support, in the sense that our anchor, our core happiness, our core joy, core peace, we tend to look outside rather than inside. We always, when things go wrong, who's gonna listen to me? Who's gonna understand me? Who's gonna take care of me? Who's gonna love me? Who's gonna show me concern and care, and who's gonna spend time with me, talk to me? So there's always, our arrows are always pointed outside like an antenna, looking for connections everywhere like a radio, you know. But then most often we realize that we, despite of doing that, despite of getting that antenna and probably getting some connection as well, we hold on to that connection completely, be it female friendships, be it one friend, few friends, or be it your parent, your sibling. There's this complete devotion to this particular relationship, like even in friendships for that matter. So I think it is important for you to have that space within yourself and say, point that arrow towards me. Where can I hold on to myself? Where can I find joy with myself? And also, not, I don't know, it does not seem healthy to invest in one relationship and take everything from them. even in friendship. Say for example, we had that conversation, right? So like you said, you need to know what I want. Like I know a particular friend is nice to go and have a coffee with, and we will probably have a good time. I know a friend I can just talk to about when I'm having a breakdown. I know a friend that I can call and rant and gossip and do all of that. You need that, spread, because see, all of us are different people, all of us have different qualities, and every need can't be fulfilled from one relationship. So I think it is important as women to put your antenna towards yourself to cure that loneliness. Secondly, I think one thing I started doing is going to random females and asking them to be my friend. And I think when I look at them and I talk to them, I consciously try to understand them and treat them as a human. Like I try not to judge, because normally and naturally judgment is something that we do. Like whatever choice a woman makes, whether she chooses to be single or she chooses to be in a relationship, whatever she does, the natural reaction is to judge her. So I think I do this exercise where I talk to them and then I try to understand them, what their world is like. I'm extremely curious of what that particular person is like. And I think making friends with them and doing all of those girly things and having that space to do those girly things is something is also going to cure your loneliness. Because as much as women, we might, when if you don't talk to us, if you don't talk to each other, we look like a man, unapproachable, bitch like, and all of that. But if you actually come and talk, we are actually, all of us women are inherently nice. So once we get that connection going on, you will see that there are layers that she is feeling, whatever you are feeling, and that particular connection and bond will bring all of you close together. So I think these are the two things that I would encourage all of you to do it. And if you have other things also, do share with us. We want to grow as a community, right? What do you think, Pauline?
This is unrelated, but like if you're in Vellore and kind of organizes events in Vellore and it's
Thank
like
you.
girly and fun and creative, you can probably DM us and we'll send you, links that you can use to register for these events. But again, it's something that happens only in Vellore because that's where she is right now. But yeah, so these are spaces that we are actively looking forward to creating and having, because it's safe to be in your feminine energy without you being a trad wife or being this hyper independent person. You're just you, and there's no judgment because it's just you existing and doing your thing. I think this is like a wonderful place for us to stop. Female loneliness epidemic, hopefully we'll cure it pretty soon. uh, yeah, but yeah, like it's going to be a journey, but yeah, if you liked what you heard today, please do like us, like this video, subscribe to our channel. uh you can comment for better engagement because we love reading comments that kind of come our way. We're on Spotify, Instagram, and at YouTube, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, thank you all for listening, and we all will see you for the next episode. So until then, a big warm hug from us to you. Take care. Bye bye.